December 1944, 3:47 p.m. A railway siding outside Peterborough, Cambridgeshire. The cattle car doors scrape open and the light hurts. Oberfeldwebel Hans Becker steps down onto gravel, hands raised, expecting rifle butts. The sky is low and grey, spitting frozen rain. His tunic is stiff with dried Channel salt. 43 hours since capture near Caen. 43 hours believing every minute might be his last. A British sergeant, middle-aged, weatherproof face, no theatrics, gestures toward a row of tables under a canvas awning. "Queue up, lads. Medical inspection first. Anyone wounded, speak now." No shouts, no dogs, no blows. Becker watches a corporal hand a German private a tin cup of water. The private drinks, then stares at the cup as if it might vanish. The corporal nods once and moves to the next man. Becker's hand goes to his throat. The water is cold and clean and no one spits in it. Something in the machinery of his understanding begins to turn, because restraint, in the end, is the hardest victory to claim. If this kind of history interests you, stories where the truth outpaces the myth, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. They had been told what awaited them. The propaganda had been clear, repetitive, and vivid. British captivity meant starvation in muddy pens, beatings for amusement, work details designed to kill slowly, summary execution for officers. The Geneva Convention was a lie told by soft democracies that would abandon it the moment it became inconvenient. For men raised under the Third Reich, capture was not an option. It was a failure so complete that death was preferable. And yet, here they were. Alive. Standing in an orderly line while a tired British medic checked pupils and pulses and made notes on a clipboard. The propaganda had prepared them for wolves. They had found shepherds with ledgers. The mess hall is a Nissen hut that smells of boiled potatoes and carbolic soap. Becker is handed a metal tray, dented British Army issue, and moves down the serving line. A cook, heavy-set and bored, ladles stew into the compartment. Another cook adds 2 slices of bread, pale but real. A third pours tea into a tin mug. Becker stares at the mug. It's dented along one side. The enamel is chipped near the rim. It looks exactly like the kind of mug he saw British soldiers drinking from in a Pathé newsreel before the war. "Move along, mate," the cook says. Not cruel, just practical. Becker sits. He lifts the mug. The tea is weak and oversweetened and piping hot. He drinks. Around him, other men do the same. Some eat quickly, mechanically, the way starving men eat. Others go slowly, deliberately, trying to make it last. One private, barely 19, sets his spoon down and bows his head and does not lift it for a long time. No one mocks him. That tin mug, chipped and ordinary, becomes the object Becker will remember for the rest of his life. Here's what the British decided, quietly, before the first German prisoner ever set foot on English soil. Captured enemy personnel would be treated in strict accordance with the 1929 Geneva Convention. Not because it was easy, not because it felt good, but because Britain was fighting a war to defend civilization. And you cannot defend civilization by discarding it the moment it becomes inconvenient. The policy came from the top. Churchill's War Cabinet, the War Office, the Directorate of Prisoners of War. It was codified, circulated, and enforced. 4 pillars held the system upright. Security. Treat prisoners well, and they cause fewer problems. Abuse them, and you create desperate men with nothing to lose. Intelligence. Humane conditions encourage cooperation. Interrogators knew that anger closes mouths. Trust, extended carefully, can open them. Diplomacy. Britain held German prisoners. Germany held British prisoners. Reciprocity was not sentiment, it was strategy. Treat their men well, and your own men might survive in kind. Morality. Some things are not negotiable. You do not torture. You do not starve. You do not humiliate. Not because the enemy deserves mercy, but because you deserve to remain civilized. By war's end, Over 400,000 German POWs passed through British custody, camps in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. Red Cross inspections were frequent, unannounced, and documented. Mortality rates among German POWs in British hands were astonishingly low, under half of 1%, most from pre-existing wounds or illness. The daily ration for a German POW was nearly identical to that of a British soldier, around 3,000 calories. Adequate protein, vegetables when available, tea twice a day, bread that wasn't sawdust, not luxury, not indulgence, just sufficiency, the bare bones of dignity. And the difference between sufficiency and starvation is the difference between civilization and barbarism. Processing takes 2 hours. Names recorded in ledgers. Personal effects inventoried. Watches, rings, photographs, identity discs, and stored in labelled envelopes. A British officer, speaking slow and careful German, explains camp rules. No escape attempts will be tolerated, but no reprisals will be inflicted without cause. Work is expected. Medical care is guaranteed. Male privileges will follow once identities are confirmed. The medical officer is a Scotsman in his 50s, balding, with nicotine-stained fingers. He checks Becker's ribs, bruised during the surrender scuffle, and makes a note. "You'll live," he says in English, then repeats it in broken German. "Du wirst leben." Becker almost laughs. It's the first time anyone has said that to him in days. The barracks are wooden huts, arranged in neat rows behind double fences. Becker is assigned Hut 7, Bed 14. The mattress is thin but dry. There are 2 blankets, both grey wool, both scratchy but warm. The stove at the centre of the hut radiates weak heat. An older prisoner, a Feldwebel from Bavaria, catches Becker's eye. "First night?" "Yes. You'll get used to it." A pause. "It's not what they told us." "No," Becker agrees quietly. "It isn't." That evening, the first meal in barracks. More stew, bread, tea. Becker eats slowly. He holds the mug in both hands and feels the warmth seep into his palms. Somewhere in the hut, a man is crying, quietly, face turned to the wall. No one remarks on it. This, Becker thinks, is what defeat looks like when it does not include annihilation. January 1945. The cold settles in hard. Becker is assigned to a work detail at a farm outside Wisbech, Cambridgeshire. Flat land, black soil, grey horizons. The kind of landscape that makes you understand why the English are phlegmatic. The work is agricultural, lifting potatoes out of frozen ground, repairing fences, mucking out barns, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. The farmer, a man named Whitmore, 60-something, Methodist, taciturn, watches the first morning in silence, then nods. "Do it right," he says, "and we'll get along." Becker does it right. The other men do the same, partly because the work is honest, partly because idleness in winter is its own punishment, partly because doing good work earns respect, and after months of being treated like vermin by their own officers, respect feels revolutionary. The guard assigned to the detail is a lance corporal named Reg, 44 years old, recalled from reserve, formerly a bus driver in Nottingham. He carries a rifle, but never points it. Mostly he smokes roll-ups and reads the paper and reminds the prisoners when it's time to break for tea. After the first week, he stops escorting them back to the truck, just waves them on. "Go on then, I'll finish my ciggy." Trust extended in increments, like a loan repaid in installments. One morning in February, the farmer's wife brings out a tray, tea, digestive biscuits, a wedge of hard cheese. She sets it on the tailgate of the truck without a word. Becker takes a biscuit. It's plain, slightly sweet, crumbles in his hand. He eats it slowly. The farmer's wife watches from the kitchen window. Doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just watches. Later, Whitmore mentions that her son is a POW in Germany. Stalag something or other. Becker understands then. She is not kind because she likes Germans. She is kind because she knows what she hopes is happening to her son. Reciprocity enacted one biscuit at a time. March 1945. A prisoner named Gerhardt, 26, Hamburg, shrapnel wound from Normandy that never healed properly, develops an infection. He's taken to the camp infirmary, which is a repurposed schoolhouse with whitewashed walls and the faint smell of iodine. The doctor is a woman, Captain Elizabeth Hartley, Royal Army Medical Corps, late 30s, brisk, no nonsense. She examines the wound, cleans it, injects penicillin. "You're lucky," she says in German. "Another week and you'd have lost the arm." Gerhardt stares at her. "Why?" he asks. She looks up from her notes. "Why what? Why save it? I'm the enemy." She caps her pen. "You're a patient," she says. "That's all you are in here." Records from British POW medical facilities show treatment protocols identical to those for Allied personnel. No segregation of medicines, no deprioritization of care. The Hippocratic Oath, it turned out, did not include an enemy exemption clause. Gerhardt keeps his arm. He also keeps a memory. A British officer who treated him like a human being when he had no reason to and no audience to impress. April 1945, Easter Sunday. A chaplain, Church of England, Major Crowther, thin, bookish Welsh accent, arrives at the camp and offers to hold a service. Attendance is voluntary. About 60 prisoners show up, Catholics and Lutherans together, sitting on benches in the camp's assembly hut. Crowther speaks in English, then a prisoner translates. The sermon is short, scriptural, apolitical. He talks about resurrection, about hope after despair, about the possibility of redemption. At the end, he distributes small care packages from the Red Cross, cigarettes, chocolate, a folded card with a printed verse. One of the guards, a young private named Daniels, 17, fresh-faced, clearly uneasy, stands at the back of the hut and listens. When the hymn starts, "Abide with me," sung in German, he removes his cap. It's a small gesture. Maybe he doesn't even think about it. But the prisoners notice. Becker will say, decades later, in a letter to a British historian, "I realized then that they saw us as men who had made mistakes, not as monsters who could never be forgiven. That distinction saved more than our lives. It saved our souls." If you're still watching, you're the kind of person who gets it. History is in the details. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. May 1945. The war in Europe ends. The camp receives authorization for POWs to send letters home. 1 per month, strictly censored, no military or political content. Becker writes to his mother in Dusseldorf. He keeps it simple. He's alive. He's healthy. The British are fair. Please don't worry. The censor, an intelligence officer named Lieutenant Penrose, Oxford educated, fluent in German, reads it, nods, stamps it approved. "She'll be glad to hear from you," Penrose says. "I hope so," Becker replies. Those letters rippled outward, thousands of them, sent from British camps to German homes. They arrived in a country that had been told the Allies were savages. They arrived with postmarks from England, Scotland, Wales. They told a different story. Not propaganda, just facts. I am fed. I am clothed. I am treated fairly. Some recipients didn't believe them. Others filed them away, confused, uncertain. A few began to question what else they had been told that wasn't true. Ideas are harder to kill than men, and sometimes a letter is more dangerous than a bomb. June 1945. The guards at the farm detail stop counting heads at the end of the day. They just open the truck gate and wait for the prisoners to climb in. One afternoon, Whitmore hands Becker the keys to the tractor. "Field needs ploughing," he says. "Think you can manage?" Becker takes the keys. They're warm from Whitmore's pocket. "Yes, sir." "Right. Off you go then." No guard, no oversight. Just a man, a tractor, and a field. Becker ploughs until dusk. Straight lines, no shortcuts. He returns the tractor, hands back the keys. Whitmore inspects the field, nods. Good work. 2 words, but they mean everything. By late summer, some prisoners are walking unescorted into Wisbech for supplies. They're issued temporary passes, told to be back by 1800 hours. They go. They return. Why? Because running means throwing away the one thing they've rebuilt: self-respect. Because escape means becoming a hunted animal again. Because impossibly, some of them have started to take pride in the work, the routine, the quiet accumulation of ordinary days. One evening during harvest, the thresher breaks down. Whitmore swears, kicks the wheel, checks his watch. "We'll lose half the field if we don't finish tonight." Becker and 3 others volunteer to stay late. No extra rations, no reward. Just the job, unfinished. They work by lamplight until 11. The thresher is coaxed back to life. The wheat is saved. Whitmore shakes each man's hand. "Appreciated," he says. Reg the guard, leaning on the truck, grins. "Bloody hell, never thought I'd see the day." Becker smiles, neither did he. Becker lies awake one night in July, listening to the rain on the hut roof. He thinks about the propaganda, the lectures, the rallies, the promises. If they lied about the British, what else did they lie about? It's a dangerous thought, the kind that, once admitted, cannot be unthought. He doesn't speak it aloud, not yet. But it settles in his chest, heavy and undeniable. Years later, 1982 to be exact, Becker writes it down in a letter to a researcher. "I did not stop being German, but I stopped being the German they wanted me to be. And that began with a cup of tea I did not expect to receive." Winter, 1946. Repatriation begins. Trains, trucks, ships. Men processed out in waves, sent home to a Germany that barely resembles the one they left. Some go eagerly, some reluctantly, some don't go at all. The British government permits volunteers to remain temporarily. Labour is desperately needed. The country is rebuilding, and some POWs have nowhere to return to. Homes bombed, families scattered, cities erased. Becker volunteers. So does Gerhardt. So do about 20 others from the camp. They're reclassified as civilian workers, paid wages, given lodging. The barbed wire comes down. In 1947, Whitmore offers Becker a permanent position. Room, board, fair wage. Becker accepts. He writes to his mother. She writes back. She doesn't understand, but she doesn't condemn him either. He stays for 3 years, long enough to save money, learn fluent English, and decide what kind of man he wants to be. When he finally returns to Germany in 1950, he carries letters of reference from Whitmore, from Reg, from Captain Hartley. He also carries that chipped tin mug, wrapped in newspaper, tucked into the bottom of his kit bag. This is not a story about kindness. Kindness is optional, decorative, contingent on mood. This is a story about restraint, about a nation at war that chose not to become the thing it was fighting. The British did not feed German POWs because they liked them. They fed them because the alternative was to descend into the same barbarism that had prompted the war in the first place. They didn't need to treat wounded enemies. They did it anyway. They didn't need to let prisoners write home, work with dignity, worship freely. They did it anyway. Because civilization is not what you do when it's easy. It's what you do when every instinct says to do otherwise. Becker kept that mug for 60 years. When he died in 2004, his daughter found it in a cabinet, wrapped carefully with a note underneath. "This was given to me when I expected nothing. It taught me that the measure of a people is what they do to those who cannot fight back." If this mattered to you, subscribe. These stories deserve to be remembered. The mug is still there, in a small museum in Düsseldorf. Chipped enamel, dented rim, ordinary in every way, except for what it meant. And sometimes, the smallest things carry the heaviest truths. Restraint, in the end, is the only victory that lasts.